Hey, ladies and gents, I am commercial photographer Tony Roslund, and welcome to my studio. I asked you guys for questions, and you did not disappoint. I got tons of questions, lots of really good questions, so I picked a few that are kind of all over the spectrum. I'll try to answer those today the best that I can, and then hopefully you guys will keep sending them, and we can keep having this little time with just the two of us. So let's jump into it, shall we? All right, we're back, and the first question is from Darren Casey, and he asks, what are your thoughts on switching on the lights when shooting interiors using available light, even in the daytime? My magazines don't tend to like it, whereas private clients switch them all on. What's your preference? Well, this one is subjective. You know, you mentioned the magazines and then your private clients, etc., and you kind of got to go with what your clients want. I mean, if a magazine is dictating that all the lights have to be on, then by all means turn all the lights on. But if you're asking what I do in the work where I have that option of whether they're on or not, where I kind of have free reign, which is most of the time, I only turn them on when I actually need them. So I don't have a policy of turning on all the lights or making sure all lights are off. I really go into a space, and as I walk through, if I see a dark room and I turn the lights on, then those lights stay on for my shoot. Like you, I use a lot of available light. I will supplement with some light, and I'll get into that on some other video at some other time, but I typically will just turn on lights if I need to lighten up a particular area in the space, or if there's lights over top of a table and I think that's going to help set the mood in there or something. One thing I will do though is I will capture a frame with the lights off and then turn on whatever lights I need, capture a separate frame for that, and then I'll put them together in post, and I'll change the lit frame into a luminosity layer so that that color cast isn't affecting my image, but I am getting the extra added brightness or added exposure to the scene as a result. So hopefully that helps kind of answer your question. Good luck. All right, so our next question comes from Kyle Martin, and he says, Tony, I follow you on Instagram and love your work. Thank you. When I photograph interiors, I rarely use lights, but instead just take a series of bracketed shots. Me too. However, sometimes I find with photos, I get some kind of haze or flaring on shots. I've thought about picking up a decent polarizer to help with that, along with removing any unwanted reflections. Do you have any gear tips or product recommendations to help with that? Well, I actually do. I use the Lee Filter Systems Compendium hood, and that Compendium hood not only blocks flare, but also has spaces where I can drop in filters like a polarizer. So I get a 2-for-1 there. Now they're not cheap, but any good polarizer is not going to be cheap. You kind of get what you pay for when it comes to polarizers. If you get a cheap polarizer, you're probably going to get a bunch of color casts and stuff. Not to mention the fact that the quality of the glass probably isn't real good. And if you're paying a whole bunch of money for a tilt shift lens or whatever lens that you're using, the last thing you want to do is put crappy filters on it. So spend the money, get a Lee or a Tiffin or a Hoya or a Stingray or something like that. Get yourself a nice polarizer, and then you can use a card like a gobo. Get a magic arm come off the leg of your tripod to hold that gobo to block the flare or whatever, or you can go the Compendium hood route and use the Lee drop-in filters as well, and that should solve most of the problems that you have. So hopefully I answered your questions there. If you still have questions, just hit me back. All right, next question is from Alexander Francesco, and he says, do you storyboard your photo projects? If not, what is your thought process for creating an image? I kind of storyboard my projects. If it's coming from an agency, if I'm shooting food or product or something like that, and the job is coming from an agency, they probably have storyboards or mood boards or something that they've had to pitch their client, and so I can use those as my storyboards. When I'm shooting architecture, it's a little bit different, but I still go out and I scout the project. We take scout shots, we go back to the client's office, or we communicate through some sort of Hightail or other software that we can communicate back and forth and make annotations and notes and such. And with that, we kind of develop what would be the equivalent of a storyboard for architecture. So I know what images they want and kind of what angles they want, if there's any furniture they want added or removed, etc. And so that kind of creates a storyboard, I guess you could say. So, yeah, so hopefully that answers your question. All right, Travis Carroll. He basically says, I'd like to know everything from set etiquette to workflow to client communication to a no BS English definition of usage rights, client agreements, pre-production, invoicing, how to address additional shots and associated costs on set, studio workflow such as client viewing and constant communication throughout a shoot, deadlines, file delivery, taxes, justification of spending, efficiency, etc. Man, Travis, that's a lot of stuff. There's probably no way I'm going to get through all that today, but let's see if we can pick a few of them here and dive in and get you some answers, all right? So let's start back at the beginning. You asked about etiquette. I am of the mindset that somebody needs to be in charge on set. And because the photographer is ultimately the one who is getting paid for this and responsible for making sure everything gets done in the amount of time provided and you meet budget and all of that other stuff, I think that it's the photographer's responsibility to take charge on set. Having said that, when I'm on set, I'm always directing people, I'm watching my time, I'm making sure I'm sticking to the shot list. If it's food or something, I'm constantly communicating with the kitchen. If it's architecture, I'm communicating with the host of the space that I'm at, whether it's some sort of a property manager or facilities person or whatever it is. And so I just try to make sure that everything is running as smoothly as possible. Now, with that same mindset, if you're on set, if you're on my set, I assume you're there to help. And so I don't hesitate to ask anybody there, whether it's my crew or a client or, part of the agency if they're involved in something. I'll tell anybody, hey, can you grab me an extra battery out of my bag? We're all there, we're working as a team, we're trying to get stuff done. So that's kind of how I treat it, is that the photographer is in charge, and I'm polite to people, but I'm also very direct and try to be brief and get my point across very quickly so that we can move efficiently on set. So one of the things as the person in charge of a set, the director of a photo shoot, I should say, you have to remember is that your crew and your clients and you all need to eat. And if you're anything like me, I'm on set, I'm focused on being creative and making sure everything gets done, and I forget to eat a lot of times. So I have to make sure that I stop, and I remember that everybody else is probably starving to death, and we need to take time off, and we need to go get some food, or we need to send a runner to get some food so everybody can eat. So make sure you do that. That'll make you much more pleasant person to be around if you remember to feed your crew. So what else do we have here? Let's see. Address additional shots and associated costs on set. Well, that's something that I know there's a lot of software like BlinkBid and these things where you can make quick revisions or modifications and print out for change orders and things like that with clients, and they can sign off, and that's probably good practice. I don't necessarily do that. All of the clients that I work with are clients that I trust. I try not to work with clients that don't give me a warm, fuzzy feeling. I like to pick and choose that way, and I like to have conversations with clients and get a feel for who they are before we even do a project together so that I know if I can trust them. And if I'm working with them, then I probably trust them, in which case, if they ask me for a change on set, I'll let them know that there's a fee associated. If I know what that fee is, I'll tell them. Usually if I get the thumbs up, we just kind of move forward and drive through. And later on, if they ever gave pushback, I don't have anything to cover my rear because I didn't get them to sign anything, but I do own the copyrights to the images. So there is, I can hold back images if I have to until we work it out. It's never come to that. I've never had that problem. So typically I just make sure that we communicate. They understand what they're getting into, I understand what they're after, so that there's no miscommunication, and you're fine. Typically problems arise when there's a miscommunication, so just communicate. What else do we have? Let's see. All right, you have a lot of other things here. Invoicing, that's a whole nother video. Studio workflow is going to be another video. File delivery is another video. All of that stuff, all other videos. The justification of spending, you know, if I need it and it's going to help me make more money in my business, then I buy it. If I can't justify it that way, if it's just a want or a wish list item, then I wait until I like knock down a huge shoot or something like that where I have a little extra play cash, and then I'll pick it up then. But typically, if I'm going to do stuff like that, it's right before the end of the year so I can write all that stuff on taxes. If I have extra money that I need to figure out how to spend, then that's when I do it. So anyway, hopefully a few of those got handled for you, Travis. As I said, we'll be making some other videos on a lot of these topics, so keep tuning in, subscribe if you haven't already, and stay tuned. So let's see. All right, the last question is from Scott Schmidt, and he says, Tony, what kind of setup do you suggest besides seamless paper? I need a white catalog backdrop solution for some shoots using and preparing foods like vegetables, etc. that will be wet and can't be on paper. I'm looking for something that should set up and break down super easy and store away, etc. Well, Scott, I happen to have just the thing I think will work for you. It's what I use, and it's called Centra board or PVC board. It depends on who you're talking to. And it's basically a thin whiteboard. I get it in 1/8 inch or 3mm. I can't remember how they do the measuring for that, but either way, 1/8 inch or 3mm board, and it's fairly rigid. It's like foam core but thinner, and it's more rigid. It doesn't dimple and things like foam core. It's much more white than foam core, so I use it for bounce cards and all kinds of other stuff in the studio. But what I like about it for this solution is that you can get it wet. In fact, I use it to put cosmetic smears and things on, or food or whatever I need, and then I just put it in the sink and rinse it off and dry it off, and it's good to go. It's not porous, so it doesn't hold any water or anything like that, so I think it'd be perfect for you. It's also flexible, so if you needed to make a swoop type of a set, you could do that as well, because it will bend very easily. Your next question is probably going to be, where do I get it? Well, I get mine from a wholesale plastics distributor here in the area. And if you don't know where to find one of those, go to any sign shop in your area and ask them where they get their plastics to make their signs. You know, the stuff that goes over any business, you know, the overhead signs. Sign shops go through tons of that stuff. So wherever they're getting it from, you can chase that lead down and probably buy it directly from them as well. Be warned, you're probably going to have to buy it in full sheets, like 4x8 sheets, but the stuff is fantastic. As I said, I put A-clamps on it and use it on set as bounce cards and things. I even did a video on jewelry photography where I used the Centra board where I glued the jewelry down with hot glue gun right to the Centra board, and that allows me to rotate the jewelry on set to find that perfect angle without having to move the camera all over the place. It's just super versatile stuff. I love it. I can't say enough good things about the PVC board, so hopefully you can find a sheet of that and you can give that a shot. Let me know how it works out for you. All right, I'm tired of talking. I know you guys are probably tired of listening to... All right, I'm tired of talking. I know you guys are probably tired of listening to me as well. So if you have questions, throw them down in the comments. We'll hit them up on the next Q&A. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe to the channel so you can stay up to date on all the latest videos that I'm putting out. And if you're so inclined, maybe follow me over on Instagram. That's it for now. If you sent in a question, thank you so much. If you're going to be sending in the questions, I really look forward to seeing what you got. I'll do my best to answer everything that I can. Throw them down in the comments and I'll put them in one of our future videos. Thanks, guys. That's it. I'm out.